My name is Ed, and this is a video in slow English for you to practice your English by watching and listening. Today, I'm in Sydenham Hill Wood, and this wood might look like just a normal wood, but it is actually hiding lots of really interesting history, because this wood used to be part of a much bigger forest called the Great North Wood, and this wood covered almost all of South London. But because London grew, London expanded, now most of the forest has disappeared, and this is the last remaining part. So come with me today and let's explore Sydenham Hill Wood, where we're going to find old abandoned railways, fake churches, and even a spot where one of the most famous painters of all time painted one of his most famous works. Where I am now used to be an old railway, and you can actually see behind me where the trains used to run. They used to come along this path and under this bridge. And the railway was built to bring people to the Crystal Palace. Now, if you've watched my video on the Crystal Palace, you will know what the Crystal Palace is. But if you haven't, it was basically this big glass building that was built to host an exhibition, and people came from all over the world to this exhibition. And an exhibition is somewhere where you show inventions and products for people to come and look at. Now, this railway was built to bring people to the Crystal Palace. And if you haven't watched my video on the Crystal Palace, I highly recommend going to watch it, because there is some really interesting history and a really interesting story behind the building. The Crystal Palace was destroyed by fire in 1936, and that meant that the railway was not needed anymore, because there were far less people in the area, because no one was going to visit the Crystal Palace anymore. So the railway was removed, and now it's a footpath, and anyone can come and walk along the footpath. And at the end of this path, just up there, there is something very interesting, something very cool. So hang about until the end of the video and you'll see what it is. Now, something really cool is that one of the most famous French painters ever stood on that bridge behind me and painted one of his most famous works, one of his most famous paintings. But why was a French painter here in South London? His name was Camille Pissarro, and sorry if I have any French watchers. I hope I didn't completely destroy the pronunciation, but his name was Camille Pissarro, and he left France in 1870 to come here to South London to escape the Franco-Prussian War. Now, he came here and he was an impressionist. That was the style of art that he painted. And that just means that he painted everyday things, normal things. So he painted trees, rivers, people, things like this. And he has 12 paintings from when he was in South London. And his most famous painting was right on that bridge. And he painted what he could see, which is this. Now, in the painting, you can see a train going along the railway tracks, and it's going towards a train station. And this train station is Lordship Lane Station. Now, this station, Lordship Lane, is no longer there. It doesn't exist anymore because the station was destroyed by bombs in the Second World War. So this painting is actually one of the last remaining records of what the train station looked like. I think the reason the painting is so famous is because it captures a moment in time during the Industrial Revolution where the English countryside was transforming into a more modern suburb. And in the picture, in the painting, you can see that the train has steam coming out of the top. And it's a very typical painting of what things were starting to look like in England during that time. And if I stand on the bridge where Camille Pissarro painted his painting, you can see that this is now what it looks like. So a lot has changed over the years. Now, this might look like a church, but it's actually fake. These church ruins are not real. They were made to look like they're the ruins of a church. And the story as to why these were created actually dates back to when the Crystal Palace moved to Sydenham. Because when the Crystal Palace moved here to Sydenham, the area became very rich, and a lot of wealthy, rich business people moved here and had very big houses. And one of these people was the future Lord Mayor of London. And he loved to travel. In his spare time, he would go traveling through Europe. And he saw lots of old ruins of churches. And he thought, oh, that looks great. Why don't I have one built in my garden? So he had this built in his garden, and it was just built to impress people. And it's called a folly. What you see here is called a folly. And there are actually two meanings of the word folly in English. One of them is something that is fake. It looks real, but really it's fake. It doesn't have any purpose other than being something that is nice to look at. The other meaning is foolish or silly behavior. So if you hear someone describe something as a folly, they are describing it as foolish. And when the Crystal Palace burned down, all of the rich people who used to live here, they left, and their houses were abandoned and eventually destroyed. They were knocked down, but their gardens became part of nature. So this folly, which used to be part of a garden, became part of the surrounding natural area and is one of the last signs that there were ever very rich people who lived here. Now, I mentioned earlier that there was something very interesting at the end of the footpath where the railway used to run. And that is this. This is the old tunnel from the railway. And you'll remember that I said that the railway closed down in 1954. But the tunnel stayed open. So when the railway closed, this tunnel, you can see now that it's boarded up, it's closed up. But this didn't happen until quite a lot of years after the railway was closed. And it became a place for kids and teenagers to come and get up to no good. Now, in English, the phrase get up to no good means to come and misbehave. Today, you can see that it's all closed up, and this was because it became too dangerous to keep open, and you can probably imagine why. But now, it's actually been transformed into a sanctuary for bats. So behind me, there are lots and lots of bats. And if you come here on a summer evening, you can sometimes see through the cracks in the boarding, through the little gaps into the tunnel. You can sometimes come and see the bats, which is very cool. Thank you very much for watching. If you found this video interesting, I do have another similar video on my channel where I go and walk around Crystal Palace, and there is a lot of very interesting history there as well. So if you want to improve your English while learning more about South London, you can go and watch that video. I also have some other videos where I talk about some of my beliefs around language learning and what I think is the best way to learn a language. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi.
Hello, what are you doing?
I'm just making a video on some of the history around here, which is
nice.
quite interesting. Yeah.
What are you making it for?
I've got a YouTube channel where I teach English, so I basically talk about things slowly.